Alright guys, let's get into this Drytron competitive deck profile. First off, we're starting with the one copy of Meteonis Quadrantids. So you can special summon this card with Meteonis Drytron. Your opponent cannot target this card with spell and trap effects, or spell and trap cards or effects. You can only use each of the following effects of Drytron Meteonis Quadrantids once per turn. If the levels of monsters used for this card's ritual summon were 2 or less, you can destroy all spell and trap cards your opponent controls. And if this ritual summon card is destroyed, you can special summon Drytron monsters from your graveyard except Drytron Meteonis Quadrantids, whose combined attack equals exactly 4,000. Next up, we've got 3 copies of Drytron Alpha Thubin. So this card cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned with the effect of a Drytron card. You contribute one other Drytron monster or ritual monster from your hand or field, and special summon this card from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Then you can add one ritual monster from your deck to your hand, and you cannot special summon monsters except monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set the turn you activate this effect. You can only use this effect of Drytron Alpha Thubin once per turn. Next up, I've got 2 copies of Delta Altius. This card cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned with the effect of a Drytron card. You contribute one other Drytron monster or one ritual monster from your hand or field and special summon this card from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Then you can reveal one ritual monster or one ritual spell card in your hand, and if you do, draw one card. You cannot special summon monsters except monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set the turn you activate this effect. You can only use this effect of Delta Altius once per turn. Next, I've got Zeta Aldiba at 3. Again, cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned with the effects of a Drytron card. You contribute one other Drytron monster or ritual monster from your hand or field and special summon this card from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Then, you can add one ritual spell from your deck to your hand. You cannot special summon monsters except monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set the turn you activate this effect, and you can only use this effect of Zeta Aldiba once per turn. Next, I have the 1 copy of Gamma Eltanin. Again, cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned with the effect of a Drytron card. You contribute one other Drytron monster or ritual monster from your hand or field and special summon this card from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Then you can special summon one Drytron monster with 2,000 attack from your graveyard, except for Gamma Eltanin. You cannot special summon monsters except monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set the turn you activate this effect. You can only use this effect of Drytron Gamma Eltanin once per turn. Lastly, for our Drytron-based monsters, we have 2 copies of Beta Rastaban. Again, cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned with the effect of a Drytron card. You contribute one other Drytron monster or one ritual monster from your hand or field and special summon this card from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Then you can return one of your banished Drytron monsters to the graveyard. And you cannot special summon monsters except monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set the turn you activate this effect, and you can only use this effect of Beta Rastaban once per turn. Next off, we have triple copies of Cyber Angel Benten. This is your searcher for the deck. You can ritual summon this card with Machine Angel Ritual. And if this card destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the monster's original defense in the graveyard. If this card is tributed, you can add one light fairy monster from your deck to your hand. Lastly, for our ritual monsters, I have Herald of Ultimateness. So you can ritual summon this card with Oracle of the Herald, and this must be ritual summoned. When your opponent would special summon a monster or monsters, or activate a spell or trap card, or a monster effect, quick effect, you can send one fairy monster from your hand to the graveyard, negate the special summon or activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Next off, I have the one copy of Herald of Purple Light. So when your opponent activates a trap card, quick effect, you can send this card and one other fairy monster from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. Then I have 3 copies of Orange Light. So when your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can send this card and one other fairy monster from your hand to the graveyard and negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. Then I have 1 copy of Eva. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish up to 2 other light fairy monsters from your field and or graveyard, and add the same number of level 2 or lower light fairy monsters with different names from your deck to your hand, except for Eva. You can only use this effect of Eva once per turn. Then off to our hand trap, we have triple copies of Artifact Lancia. You can set this card from your hand in the spell and trap zone as a spell card, and during your opponent's turn, if the set card is in the spell and trap zone, is destroyed and sent to your graveyard, special summon it. And during your opponent's turn, you can tribute this card from your hand or face up from your side of the field, and neither player can banish cards for the rest of the turn. And this is a quick effect. Lastly, for our monsters, I have the 1 copy of Vanity's Ruler, which says that this card cannot be special summoned, and while this card is on the field, your opponent cannot special summon monsters. That's it for our monsters. Let's move on to the spells. So first up, we've got triple copies of Preparation of Rites, which lets you add 1 level 7 or lower ritual monster from your deck to your hand. Then you can add 1 ritual spell from your graveyard to your hand. Again, a good way to start off some of your combo plays, and a good way to get some of your Cyber Angel Bentens in your hand really quick. Next, we have triple copies of Cyber Emergency, again another searcher. This allows you to add 1 light machine monster that cannot be normal summoned or set, or 1 Cyber Dragon monster from your deck to your hand. And if the activation of this card in its owner's possession was negated by your opponent's card effect and sent to your graveyard, you can discard 1 card and add this card to your hand, and you can only activate 1 Cyber Emergency per turn. Again, good way to search your Benten, and good way to search some of your other light machine monsters, because every monster in this deck, with the exception of a few, are light machines. Next off, I have triple copies of Drytron Eclipse. This lets you target 1 Drytron monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. During your main phase, except the turn that this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 Drytron monster you control, and it gains 2,000 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. You can only use each effect of Drytron Eclipse once per turn. Next off, we have our field spell, Drytron Fafnir. Again at 3. When this card is activated, you can add 1 Drytron spell or trap from your deck to your hand, except for Drytron Fafnir. The activation and the activated effects of ritual spell cards cannot be negated, and once per turn, if a monster is normal or special summoned, face up while you control a Drytron monster, except during the damage step, You can reduce that monster's level by 1 per 1,000 of its current attack, minimum level 1, and that's for the rest of the turn, and you can only activate one Drytron Fafnir per turn. Lastly, for our main deck, we have triple copies of Drytron Nova. This lets you special summon one Drytron monster from your deck, but destroy it during the end phase. You can only activate one Drytron Nova per turn, and you cannot special summon monsters except monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set the turn you activate this card. That's it for our main deck. Let's move on to the extra deck. My extra deck is still a bit of a work in progress, but to start off, we have one copy of Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Sky Thunder. This requires 2 level 12 monsters. Once per turn, if an Xyz monster battles this turn, you can also Xyz summon Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Sky Thunder by using one Xyz monster you control as material. You transfer the materials from that card to this card, and then quick effect, you can detach 2 materials from this card and send all other cards from the field to the graveyard. Once per turn, if another card or cards you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can attach one card from your hand, deck, or extra deck to this card as material. Next off, I have 2 copies of Kinagashi Fucho, which is 2 level 1 monsters. This is unaffected by other cards' effects, and once per turn, quick effect, you can detach 2 materials from this card, and for the rest of the turn, this card cannot be destroyed by battle. Also, you take no battle damage from attacks involving this card. Next off, for our extra deck, I have the 1 copy of Geonator Transverser. This requires 2 effect monsters, and this linked card and monsters it points to cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And if this card points to 2 monsters, you can switch control of those monsters, and you can only use this effect of Geonator Transverser once per turn. Next off, I have 1 copy of Relinquished Anima. This requires 1 level 1 monster except a token. You can target 1 face-up monster that this card points to and equip that face-up monster to this card, maximum 1. You can only use this effect of Relinquished Anima once per turn, and this card gains attack equal to that equipped monsters. Then we've got 2 copies of Herald of Mirage Lights. This requires 2 monsters with the same type and attribute except for tokens. And when a spell and trap or effect is activated, quick effect, you can send 1 fairy monster from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. If this card is in your possession is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, you can add up to 2 ritual monsters or ritual spells with different names from your graveyard to your hand. You can only use each effect of Herald of Mirage Lights once per turn. Next up, I have the 1 copy of Access Code Talker. This requires 2+ effect monsters. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this card's effect activation. And if this card is link summoned, you can target 1 link monster that was used as material for its link summon, and then this card gains attack equal to that monster's link rating times 1,000. You can banish 1 link monster from your field or graveyard and destroy 1 card your opponent controls. Also, for the rest of this turn, you cannot banish monsters with the same attribute to activate this effect of Access Code Talker. Next, I have 2 copies of Nightmare Unicorn. Again, this requires 2+ effect monsters. 2+ monsters with different names. If this card is link summoned, you can discard 1 card, then target 1 card on the field and return it to the deck. Then, if this card was co-linked with, when the effect is activated, you can draw 1 card. and you can only use this effect of Nightmare Unicorn once per turn. And while any co-linked Nightmare monsters are on the field, from your normal draw, in your draw phase, draw one card for each different card name among those co-linked Nightmare monsters, instead of just one card. And lastly, for this extra deck, I have 2 copies of Nightmare Phoenix. So this requires 2 monsters with different names, and if this card is link summoned, you can discard 1 card, then target 1 spell and trap your opponent controls and destroy it. Then if this card was co-linked when this effect was activated, you can draw 1 card. You can only use the effect of Nightmare Phoenix once per turn, and co-linked monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. And that's it for my extra deck, and that's it for this Drytron competitive deck.